Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Cinema Cluster F. It is I, your host, James. First of all, let's get all the salutations out of the way. Merry Christmas to you all, and I hope you have a great holiday coming up in a couple of days. With that out of the way, let's get into our review. So, last night I went and saw The Iron Claw. Now, I don't know if a lot of you know this, but I am a huge, wrestling fan. But I, myself, am not a savant on the Von Erich family, who this movie is about. Now, yeah, I know the structure, the outline of the tragedy that this family was, and the pain and suffering that this family had suffered. But I'm not, because I was little when a majority of the family, other than Kerry, the Texas Tornado, were big. Like I remember Kerry Von Erich. But the film is a 2 hour and 10 minute. It's a 2 hour 10-minute movie. And yes, there are a lot of historical inaccuracies, mostly with the timeline, and omission of one of the brothers committing suicide or offing himself, Chris. But honestly and truthfully, if everything was to a T, timeline-wise, and Chris was also in the film, this movie would have easily been 3.5 hours long. That is how tragic this family was. So, for those of you who don't know, back in the 70s, there was a gentleman by the name of Fritz Von Erich. He was a wrestler in Texas for the NWA. In NWA, he also owned World Class Championship Wrestling. He had, I think it was 6 sons. Well, 6 sons total. One of them sadly passed away. I believe he was like 5.5. Then he had Kevin, Kerry, David, Chris, and Michael. So the movie starts with, it's Kevin Von Erich is the main character and everything that he had to go through in his life. He had a chance to win he actually was the NWA Texas champion. He then had a match against Harley Race to see if he'd get a chance at the NWA World title. He won by disqualification, and he never really got a fair chance at Harley Race for the NWA title. Then we go into David. David was one of the, from what it seemed like in the film, because again, like I said, I'm not that strong on the Von Erich family. But David was really good on the mic, it seems. And honestly, did read somewhere that some people thought he was the better Von Erich out of all of them. And he actually was being built up to the NWA World Championship. Now, basically, one of the underlying themes of this film was Fritz Von Erich wanting that NWA 10 pounds of gold title in the Von Erich family. That was his brass ring, if you'll call it, because he never actually obtained it. So there was a chance for David to get it. David was going to, be fighting Ric Flair all around the world, because Ric Flair was NWA champion at this time. He was going to be fighting Ric Flair all around the world. Sadly, in Tokyo, Japan, David was found dead in his hotel room from a ruptured intestine and it was some sort of illness. and per the movie. And if I read it correctly, that is correct. But some people also think that there may have been an overdose involved in it. But you know what? Don't know. So everything's just going crazy, and everything goes crazy with that. Kevin still is just focused on the ring. Kevin's now married to his wife, Pam, who still to this day, they are married 40 some odd years later, which is impressive. Then we move on to, who was next? Was it Michael? Yeah, it was Michael. Sorry, because trust me, you'll understand when I'm like, why I'm confused. So we move on to Michael. Michael never really wanted to get into the business. He was more, via the movie, he was more into music. He was more into like the camera angles. He never actually wanted to get in the ring. But he gets in the ring. He's tagging with Kevin, and in one of the tag team matches, and in the movie, he's in a tag team match with Kevin, and he separates his shoulder. In real life, I don't know if it was a singles match or if it was a tag match, but he does actually dislocate his shoulder, separates his shoulder. He then has surgery. For real life, he has surgery and has toxic shock syndrome occur after the surgery. He then, after he heals, gets back in the ring, to continue the family line. Unfortunately, he also passes away. First, he retires from the ring. And then, sadly, on the family farm in Denton, Texas, he took a mixture of sleeping pills and booze, and was down by a river, and he committed suicide. Now, mind you, suicide is going to be a continual thing here. I'm trying to think. So David's gone, Michael's gone. Kevin he's just a wreck, and he starts, via the movie, sleeping at the gym. And, in the ring, because the Von Erich curse, he's afraid that it's going to hit Pam and their children. Which, very creepy part of this whole story. Michael dies on February 10th, 1984. On February 10th, 1985, Pam gives birth to one of Kevin's daughters. It's just so weird how everything in a year just all intertwined. Okay, so I think we're moving on to Kerry now. Yes, Kerry. So, Kerry's training for the Olympics. Now, this is in 1980. Because like I said, they do bounce around a bit in this film. But, yeah. So, Kerry's training for the Olympics. Unfortunately, this is at the time where the Olympics were being held in Moscow, and the U.S. boycotted them. So Kerry never got a chance to go to the Olympics. Kerry then hops in the ring and starts training to become a superstar, a wrestler. He does very well. He faces Ric Flair for the NWA Heavyweight Championship at the Parade of Champions. He winds up beating Flair for the title. The true story is, about 18 days later, Von Erich lost it back to Flair. And Flair actually shouldn't have won it because Von Erich's feet were under the ropes, which is technically a rope break, and the pin should not have counted. The referee still counted anyway, giving Flair the title. Now, in the movie, they made it seem that after Kerry had won the title and came home, he went on a motorcycle ride because he just wanted to get out of the house. He then had an accident and had, from basically his shin down on his right foot, amputated. Now, there is a little bit of poetic license here because Von Erich did, in fact, get in a motorcycle accident and did, in fact, have part of his leg amputated. But it wasn't after that match. It was a little later on. So, Kerry then, he starts making it bigger. He starts busting his butt and, to get back into shape for the ring. Basically with a prosthesis on his right leg. Which, if you know Kerry, he had that prosthesis while wrestling in WWE, which is a very impressive fact. So, Kerry, works hard, just gets, to train with this dang prosthesis on. And he actually gets into, World Wrestling Federation at the time. And the movie has it that now Kevin is in charge of WCCW because Fritz is getting old. And by the way, this movie made Fritz look out to be the biggest asshole in the world, which I've heard is rather accurate. So it makes him out to be the biggest jerk. So him and Kevin are sitting watching SummerSlam 1992, where Texas Tornado beats Mr. Perfect for the Intercontinental Championship. They're sitting there talking about how Kevin is thinking of selling WCCW to the WWF because he needs to buy a house because he and his wife are having more kids, and the apartment that they're in at the time, it's not, quite sizable for them. So they need to move. Fritz gets mad at him and, threatens him, saying that if you sell the company, you don't ever walk through my doors again. And at that point, you hear them announce on the TV that Texas Tornado won the IC title, which he legitimately does win the IC title in history. He has won it. So it's Christmas time in 92, and Kerry comes back to the house with, I can't remember her name in the movie, but he comes back to the house with a female companion, and I think her name was Tanya. I'm not sure, but I'm not positive on that. And, says, hey, we're going to actually be in Mexico for Christmas. We're not going to be staying here. Fritz gets upset. And then, Kevin starts walking through the dining room and runs into Kerry, gives Kerry a huge hug, and asks Kerry if he's okay. Kerry says, yeah, I'm fine. And Kevin knew it wasn't true. Then a little bit later on in the film, per this film, Kerry calls Kevin late at night and sits talking to him on the phone, saying that he's in pain. He can't do this. World Wrestling Federation is not going to sign him again for another contract. They're giving up on him, and that he is going to, just be doing house shows and won't be on TV again. And he just tells Kevin that he wants to end it all. Kevin tells him, no, don't do it. Via the movie, because you don't really, have full thing. Like, the family has said that everything in the film is pretty close to accurate. But again, they had to smush the timeline together, because if they did this movie perfectly, it'd be, like I said, 3.5, maybe even 4 hours long. Because there was so much crap with this family that they had to unpack. So, Kerry, how it goes, Kerry shows up at the farm, and Kevin, rushes to meet up with him. You can't see Kerry at all, and, Kevin sees Kerry's car, sees the door open, thinks it's weird, starts running to the house to see if Kerry's in there, and he hears a gunshot. Per the movie, Kevin looked around a tree, saw Kerry dead with a gunshot wound to the chest, which is factually correct. I mean, it's factually correct, and some of the other stuff after, it's kind of silly. What the movie doesn't get into is the fact that Fritz died in 1997, and then a little while later, Kevin and Pam buy the Von Erich farm. So yeah, that's basically the story. Like Fritz Von Erich had 5 or 6 sons. All but one of them are dead. Somehow, this quote-unquote Von Erich curse did not bother Kevin really at all. Now, like I said, I'm not a huge savant on the family, but yes, Michael did die pretty close to as they say in the film. But the thing is they didn't find him in real life, they didn't find him until 4 days later. Just everything with his family was just horrific. That being said, the film was fantastic. It is so well done. It is just purveys and just shows the true tragedy of this family and everything that they went through. I personally, giving it 4 out of 5, which, again, that's my ranking. You may like it better. You may hate it. That's the best thing about everything that I do. I don't care. Tell me you agree. Tell me you disagree. But as long as we're civil in the comments, it's all that matters. Now, the worst thing in this film is the guy who plays Ric Flair. Now, I'm not a Flair fan at all. I've never been a Ric Flair fan, really. But oh my God, this guy who plays Flair in this film is so bad. It was cringeworthy every time, the few scenes he was on screen. He didn't sound like Flair. He really didn't have the Flair mannerisms. And his woo was one of the worst things I've ever freaking heard. So again, like I said, I give Iron Claw 4 out of 5. Go see it if you're a wrestling fan, because just go see it, because the wrestling scenes are great, because Chavo Guerrero Jr. is one of the people who helped train everybody to do the scenes. And just everything about the scenes was great. And the film is a very good film. So I've been on here for about 21 minutes just blabbering on and on. Hopefully talk to you guys soon. And bye.